money and we've got an emergency. What can we do? Right? While I'm here talking, I also have, if anybody, there's a form that they got to fill out that's from that goes through Robert back to Kim Spencer, which is, you got to sign up for the 4 or for the 2. You got to make sure you're filled out. If anybody that hasn't given Katie and your business card or your email, if you want a link to any of the classes, again, you go on YouTube and you type in Fire Escape Seminar, and there's about 400 or 500 videos in that category that you can watch. Training with firefighters, training with building inspectors, classes like this recorded. You can actually go in there and put in Seminar Lowell, and you'll see the last class that we did just like this. So usually within 2 to 4 weeks of a class, this class gets put up there. So if somebody didn't come to this class, or some of your fire prevention guys want to get some additional training, you can just send them this link and go to YouTube and pick any of the links, or go to the National Firescape Association.org, and there's all the links, including the name and emails of the people who hosted the class. So Robert's name and his phone number and his email is there in case you want to get some feedback as to whether or not it was a good activity or a good idea. Now, let's talk about emergencies. You get to a situation, and I'm going to use an example. The Haverhill guy came up and said, "Hey, I'm the Haverhill guy. I wrote the mayor a violation on there many times, but they have no money to fix it. Little old lady down the street who violated her fire escape, she has no money to fix it. The fire escape is under foreclosure. The fire escape is in bankruptcy. What do? And they got tenants inside with kids. What can you do? The fire escape needs 20 grand to fix it. What do? One of the suggestions we've made nationwide is basically you use scaffolding. Stairs, approved, installed scaffolding by a company who comes in and puts in a scaffolding stairway that basically eliminates the need for the fire escape. So for $1,000 or $2,000 a month, a professional scaffolding company comes in and creates another stair tower for whatever the situation may be. Now, if your fire department and your building department agree upon it, that it's a temporary second means, temporary, the violation is not removed. It's just basically suspended. You're basically holding on to something to buy yourself some time. The little old lady doesn't get the building shut down, but you basically created another means of egress using a staircase that has rails, and they usually use the 8 and 8 or the 7-Eleven. They have these staircases ready to go at these scaffolding companies. Okay? And how they get to the windows, they do that. They'll create some sort of platform that feeds the stair tower. But for $1,000, $2,000, you can basically answer a situation where nobody has any money, and you really can't shut down the building because you're going to put 4 families out in the street. And the owner cannot afford the hotel. You know what I'm saying? So that'd be the landlord or something. And the city doesn't want to basically put everybody in a hotel and then go after this guy. And as you know, whenever you do a lot of these things, you basically lien the property, right? Eventually, by liening the property, this all has to get paid back, otherwise the city's going to take it, correct? Whenever something like this drastic happens, right? So, fire escapes, whenever they are so bad that nobody has any money to fix it, remember scaffolding. Properly installed by an insured scaffolding company will answer a lot of residential 3-story situations a lot with $1,000 a month. Okay. We also talked about a fire tower down in Waltham, and that every now and then the city has a school, a tower, or something of a fire escape. Can you use the DPW to basically repair the fire escape with an iron worker or somebody that has metal training? The answer is yes. It's just nuts and bolts changing. What you need is to basically hire somebody to watch, and that's the engineer. So you get the engineer oversight, and then you bring it internally, and you try to fix it. If you have no money, you try to fix it using a temporary hire. You know what I'm saying? You basically say, hey, we were quoted $35,000 to fix this fire escape. It's got to go out to bid. It's got to go out to public bid. There's 3, 6, 9 months of time that you don't have, and you know that $35,000 job is going to come back at 80 grand. Because who's going to bid on it? The local Joe iron worker that can bid it? No, because he doesn't have the work, he doesn't have the bond, he doesn't have this, he doesn't have all the requirements. So who bids it? Joe Contractor. And Joe Contractor knows it's a $35,000 job, but what's Joe charging? charge you 100 grand to do the job, and he's gonna sub it over to the Joe Ironworker anyway. So a lot of times when you don't have the money and you have to get it fixed, what you can do, and we've sometimes told people, them to do this, we sometimes have had cities when it has to go out to public bid, that basically they create a bid, they bring in the bidders. So they basically walk in and find 5, 10 iron workers in the 50-mile radius to bid the job. Then they get a Joe contractor that has the bond and has everything that they need, and they say, listen, we're gonna find the bid. We want you to oversee the bid, we'll give you a 20% markup on whatever we get as a final bid. So that's one way, if the local iron workers don't meet your requirements to do the job, you basically have a contractor that you work with all the time, and you say, hey, whatever number I finally get, I want you to just have marked up 20% to basically, because you have the bonding. And I'm just using a number, this could be any other number, but it's a $100,000 job that became 120 because ABC Contractors is now using Joe Iron Works to do the job, because ABC now will wait for their money, but they did it for 120, but they subbed it already because you already gave them the winning bid at 100. So that's another way to when on this niche market, you put it out to general bid and you're gonna get some crazy numbers on a repair. But if you wanna do it internally, get a structural engineer to basically finger paint it for dummies, go to the local iron hall and basically hire 2 local iron workers to come and work for the city directly on payroll. And if they take a month or 2 to do the job. So scaffolding and direct hire might sometimes save you some money. You know what I'm saying? But you can Band-Aid a lot of fire escapes on what's called an emergency repair, and that is, you get a connection on a fire escape that has full of rust, cut out the bolt and put a new bolt in there and leave the rust. That's right, ain't going anywhere. That's called an emergency repair. That makes it functional, not certifiable. So in the Havel situation, 3 treads are out. Yes, those 3 treads get put back in. The rest of the treads all get looked at to make sure that none of them are ready to fall through hammer testing or whatever. And anything that's questionable, you're not removing the rust at that time, you're just putting in a new bolt. But what you're not doing is welding the nose with a there's no welding showing up. You're basically using connections to basically guarantee and make it functional. And to help the vendor not carry any liability, a fire escape that he made functional is still not certifiable. So you're not supposed to use it anyway unless it's a fire emergency. And if anything should happen during a fire emergency, the city's or the owner of that building on a fire escape that was just made functional is fully liable for it, not the vendor. So a Band-Aid on any fire escape does not put the vendor in the liability. It still keeps the client holding all the liability. They just make it functional until such time permanent repairs take effect. Okay? So we have an hour, and let's open it up to questions so that we can answer questions. Then I can get you onto the website. I want to show you some of the videos that are out there, and we'll put a couple of downtown walkarounds, and I'll be able to actually find some Lowell walkarounds of what we saw when we did. But let's just open up to questions now of anything in the book, anything you guys saw, whatever questions you may have. Anybody want to open up to some questions? I'll jump at once.
You'll look at Chris back there.
Chris.
So we had a couple of fire escapes that you did in the city, right? Was it 1 or 2?
I think it's just, I think 2 most. Just a couple. We've done a lot of inspections, but we haven't done a lot of work. You guys have had activities going on here with other engineers and other vendors that have come in, and this is the greatest thing, is that this is not something that only one person can do. We basically just raised the bar that any engineer can inspect in the city, any vendor can repair in the city. The standard has just been raised, the bar from the floor has been raised to a height that everybody kind of understands. And the explanation is, if you're going to spot repair it, you're going to load test it. And if you're going to, and again, no false load test. I think there was some conversation that said some people were misclassifying their letters and saying, I performed a load test, which kind of pissed a lot of people off. You want to explain what that was?
We had a letter back about 2 months ago, big meeting one. They had gone out there and they load tested the complete fire escape. And the typical wording inside basically said that the load test was never performed. So we just, with Cisco, it kind of did a double, it kind of came almost like it was coming from you. That Cisco had load tested. So called him right away, because it didn't sound like something.
What was the severance?
The beauty about it is you're not gonna get a lot of load tests. That's the beauty. Whenever somebody says they're gonna load test, we have this whole class to say we're not load testing. We don't want a load test. Buys no bolts, buys no paint. It's really, but somebody's gonna say, no, I just want a spot repaired, and say, great, then we need to proceed to a load test. To have assurances that the remaining 50 to 75-year-old connections and bolts on rivets or square head bolts are good. A load test will affirm that, that's all. Load test for a typical residential is anywhere from 3,000 to 5,000. Could be as high as 8 if it's a bigger residential, but 3,000 to 5,000. And then on commercial applications, it starts at 5,000 to 8,000, and they can go as high as 12,000 to 15,000. In California, we've done some load testing with 25, 35. We did the Bob Hope building there. I think it was almost $40,000 to load test a 10-story fire escape.
And the load test is not done on just the areas that were repaired, it's done on
The whole system, yeah. So again, if this was one of my typical platforms, and this is 4 by 20, there's 80 square feet here, times 100 pounds, 8,000 pounds of sand, water, cables, on top of this for 30 minutes. And it can't deflect no more than 3/16.
Just doing it is dangerous.
Just doing it is dangerous.
We have had several instances where the affidavits of control construction, whether it's fire escape or just other control construction, we still do our inspections, and I've had occasion to reject the affidavits, which I encourage any other building inspectors to not accept those. We don't accept them anymore. A business owner will send a notice saying he needs to get his fire escape certified. And then without doing anything, all of a sudden in the mail, I get something from an engineer who has that qualifying language, but he's saying, yeah, I've inspected the property at 3 Smith Street, and fire escape code. When you go out and look at it, the rust is still there. Obviously, that's the first thing that's there about anything. So we don't accept those just because, and I think in the past, people have felt, okay, well, that covers my ass, I can accept this, put it in the file, but it doesn't do anything as far as because we want real compliance, so we don't accept those anymore. And I've had a couple of success stories, right out here, cobblestones. I have approved their iron work that they have come in to do repairs, and they also do scraping and painting. And, so it's a matter of training, but it's very small.
I want to ask, what have you done for a program for getting fire escapes in compliance? Sending out letters to owners, property owners?
Yeah, it started with sending out the letters. It starts next with both fire prevention as well as the city building inspectors. When they're doing this periodic inspections, 110 inspections, that they notify the owner. We're trying to soft enforcement approach to begin with. Set a priority, and falling behind, but we're going to reinitiate this. If it's a building that has, a lot of them are mixed use, but they have people sleeping there, there's residential units there, and the fire escape is needed as a second means of egress, it's not an obsolete secondary thing, it's actually in use and service. Those are the ones that we want to go after. We have a few that we're going to have to find the owner, and the owner isn't going to do anything unless we force the issue, maybe threatening to evacuate the building, but we haven't gotten to that point yet, but that's the process. We send out the information, so it's the education, most of which I've gotten from Cisco, put it in the city of Lowell, letterhead, we send it out to everybody, and then just say, if you have a fire escape building. Part of the problem is just the strictly business use buildings, unless there's work going on, we don't go into them generally. We have several of those where the main issue there is if there's a fire in that building, these guys are gonna have to decide whether or not to go. And I know at least in Lowell, they don't like to go on fire escapes at all because they know they're all antiquated. So the goal will be to get the flagging, and that's what we're moving to, so that
Get
if
academy
a
inspected.
shows up, they actually can see, certification saying it's been inspected and it's safe. They can save time and lives by being able to use it. We actually had one case. Another thing that we've done is this captain in charge of fire prevention. He's worked with me to send violation notices out. If you notice too, this copy that I gave everybody, it's got both my department's seal as well as fire department seal. So it's a joint notification working with fire. It just gives it more credibility and more enforcement, we do it together.
It's important to work directly with fire.
Absolutely.
You guys using the ticketing system also? Do you have that?
Oh, we haven't used it for this yet, but we do have it.
I think you guys would like to see it in compliance.
part of the problem is it hasn't been enforced forever. So now all of a sudden, people that are otherwise in compliance, we can't just come down hard on all at once. We want to, but it really isn't going to work too well because we'll get nothing but calls to city council. Because everybody knows the city council. We're trying to do it the way that kind of makes sense. And what we've done is we've given them their certificate of inspection, the COI 110.
Right.
So that they'll need to get this resolved before next year, or the next time the issue. We're nervous about doing that. Most cases, the reason.
Yeah, we say that it's a 3 to 5 year. You're gonna have to get your feet wet, kind of get a feeling, try to stabilize the situation, call it a tagging program. We just want to identify that we have 1,000 fire escapes or 1,200 fire escapes. And once you've identified them, you want to get them tagged, and then they're basically tagged. They
We
met the
prioritize,
certification
like I
requirement.
said, based on whether or not it's a building that has people sleeping there, there's dwelling units in the building, and it's served by one of these, that makes it a more serious issue.
So we did a walkthrough, and let me show you.
Training, here we are in Lowell, Massachusetts. Bob, say your last name, Marsilia, Italiano?
That's the entire group.
We're here looking at the building commissioner in the city of Lowell.
Just finished
doing
doing
a
a class
class
just like
right
this
down
that
by
day.
our feet. What's the greatest thing about this is we're going to be able to see all the rust and the connections. We're going to see all original hardware in squares. We're going to basically, he had a class today.
Know where it is.
And we'll-
Data intern.
Yeah, backside of the alley. Behind the Giovanni, this is the end of the alley, right across the middle street.
It's another one behind the gate too, whatever happened to that first thought. No, that's not the word. What's that one? Oh, the lock gates. It's got all those fires gate.
Fire station.
Did you cut the lock? We can go to.
Well, I don't mind.
Difficulties.
I let them complain directly to me.
Just see if we have the free Wi-Fi they had.
How many fire escapes have you found?
Oh, yeah, there's thousands, but I mean, how many have we found? Hundreds. We don't have a list yet.
Yeah.
That's, it sounds easy.
Yeah,
Actually,
no, it
do
doesn't
this,
sound easy.
I need somebody full-time just to do fire escape.
Right, that's the whole
Well,
problem.
ideally, I think the others have from a placard and number.
I mean, do you guys get all your multi-families done?
Well, what we're doing now is that's another thing, we haven't done, and we just got an ordinance, a lot of the rental units in the city, buildings don't work. We've never been able, we're supposed to be inspected every 5 years. We haven't been able, so we've got, new initiatives like that, we're gonna capture fire escapes at the same time. Whenever these buildings have fire escapes, we'll go out to inspect them, flag them.
Try to use the wireless.
What's that take?
Wireless or no?
Yeah,
We gotta sign, but I don't wanna be like one of those guys on TV, just goes like this, and they say, for 25 years, you're supposed to have been inspecting things.
You're Tom Riley
Oh,
there.
it slipped through the cracks. It has.
Well, I mean, it comes down to manpower.
Yeah, but, we gotta do something. We can't just keep saying we don't have the manpower, because we gotta do something. Because there are some of the city right now that are man traps.
Yeah.
The only reason why nothing's happened is because there hasn't been a fire there.
Right.
But like these guys, I'll tell you, they won't even go on. But if there are people on, they have to. If there's a fire, what are you gonna do? You're gonna go on a fire escape, whether it's falling off the building or not, and then things will change. Just like the building code has evolved because of tragedy. As soon as one of these fire escapes falls in one of our towns, everybody's gonna be on the scene. Why did you do this? So at least, we've sent these out, start the process.
That's a good idea.
But that's only the beginning, it's only the beginning.
Now, how many people have notified you since receiving that?
Everybody in the city.
Right, but how many people have gotten back to you?
Half a dozen. And, there are the people that are responsible, that are proactive. All it takes is a little push, and they say, okay, they hire somebody to do the work.
Yeah, you're all good people.
But the ones that work in the run down,
Yeah.
rental unit buildings where people are in there, except for fire, there's no sprinklers. Might have smoke.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be, this is a big process, but all we can do is start.
And how long will you start?
3 new inspectors, because we lost 3 guys. And so, everything's sort of down, fell behind. And now we've got some pieces, so we're back. Again, I think Cisco. Who's here from Lowell? I mean Lawrence. Did I meet you guys? Somebody's here from Lawrence, right?
Fire, you're not gonna be there.
They already left, but then nobody from building came up then. Didn't you, Katie, you invited the building commissioner and inspectors from Lawrence, right?
We did, yeah, and the 2 guys that were here from fire prevention asked me if someone was coming from building, and I said, well, they were the only 2 that replied to me. And he's like, oh, well, we got it forwarded to us from the building commissioner,
He
so.
called, it's Peter Blanchard, right?
Yes.
I thought he said he was coming. I thought-
He never replied back to me and said he was coming, just the 2 gentlemen that were sitting right
Oh,
there.
you know what he did? He sent me an email asking me for all my procedures, including fire escape stuff. That's what we didn't come to the meeting. I'm not sending them.
That's gonna be a worse problem there than, pretty much.
Cisco, I didn't tell you this, but we actually had, while you're working on that, we had a fire in an apartment building. It was built in the 70s. And the exact scenario described, it wasn't fire escapes, fire balconies, wood frame, no stairs to grade, only 2 stories. But when the fire department got there, the building wasn't, fully engulfed, but they had to go into rescue. They had, 50 people on these different balconies. That was lawfully apartment buildings. But what happened after that, the building wasn't sprinkled, is both the fire department and myself sent a joint notice to the building owner saying you either have to provide a second means of egress or you have to sprinkle the building. So they did an analysis, they checked to see if they could put in, compliant stairways from each of these balconies. And what they ended up doing was sprinklering the building. Okay, but we would have accepted, because the code will allow, secondary egress from those balconies. And when they went and checked the pricing, it was cheaper. But the bottom line is the building is safe enough.
Right, if I may, we get this call quite often with the whole sprinkler question. The problem is your insurance company, this is 3 years from now, 5 years from now, an insurance adjuster or insurance inspector goes through it in 1 year, and he walks in there and he goes, where's your second means of egress? And the person says, well, we had that looked at and we had an option, sprinkler or second means of egress. And the guy from the insurance company says, well, that's nice, but we want a second means of egress on all our buildings that we insure. So here's a 30-day letter that says you're not going to have any insurance in 30 days until you get a second means of egress here. Oh, but I got my sprinkler. You need both now. So be careful on that the insurance company is overriding you guys with that and saying, it's nice that the sprinkler is there, but should there be no water pressure, how are you going to get out then? And so they basically say you're a risk, so they're going to put that person into a pool of high risk. Okay, so I think this is, it's finally got enough juice here.
We're in the city of Lowell, and we have a fire escape right down by our feet. What's the greatest thing about this is we're going to be able to see all the rust and the connections. We're going to see all original hardware in squares. We're going to basically, he had a class today, and what we're basically looking at is a fire escape that no more paint is on it. So this is a perfect one because I can get my nose right into it. And this is a perfect example of everything that can go wrong with a fire escape. Let's talk about this one. And then we're going to go look at these other ones and these other ones and a big monster that's on the back. So this may be a 10 to 15 minute video, but what is on here works there. So let's take a look. More paint than rust or more rust than paint? So that's all you need. Let's say they knew you were coming, Bob, and they painted it.
It's a violation, it's not painted, and it's structural problem. As soon as you see there's no paint, you got a violation.
Original hardware. So let's show people what original hardware is. This is a square bolt. Square bolts. Square bolts. And some of these, so
50 to
now
75 years
before
old.
we get on that side, Bob, how about grading? Any pop grading of the spacers? So what that means is when a fireman or a person steps and your leg goes through that, you get locked. You can't save yourself because now you're trapped with a bear trap. How about rusty tears? Any rusty tears indicating that water's getting into the connection? How about cement blowout into the back? See the cement blowout? Okay, let's take a look. Any damage from a truck or anything? Any bends on this fire escape? Okay. let's take a look at is it square heads or rivets on the supports? Are those original, or have they been switched out in the past 50 to 75 years? Original. So let this fire escape rust this much. How many years? To get 100% of your paint off your fire escape? At least 25. Is there any paint that you can still see left? But even though there's no more paint on this, does this thing, which is older than 1978, have lead still in it? So it still has lead. Let's look at all the rust in between the connections. All this rust. Let's look at your treads. Missing.
Yeah, it looks like, let's just let it load up a little bit more right there while it's loading. But here we have a fire escape that basically from the ground. So you don't have to go up. Two things, you don't have to write a violation. You look up, it hasn't been painted. Isn't both the fire code and the building code require routine maintenance? Maintenance meaning what? Changing bolts or keeping it painted? So as soon as you walk onto any job, you look up and you say no paint. Well, it's failed the requirement, even on the Mass Building Code. There's a structural element to it and there's a painting element. So if you're not painting it, it's already making every connection suspect. Because as I gave you the class, I said I got two pieces of metal and I break the paint, what's it start affecting? The joint. As soon as the joint is compromised and I have to, how can I guarantee it that it's still good? Paint it and then do what to it? Load test it. So now, anything that somebody let rust completely, and there's no more paint left on the fire escape, is every joint compromised.
Yeah.
Who's going to investigate that to give you back a determination whether or not they're good or bad? The engineer. Can he see inside these joints? Can he load test it to give you the verification you need? Or can he then at that time say, you know what, it's a guess game here, so why don't we just change all these bolts out and avoid load test, not waste these thousands of dollars in water bags, sand bags, or cabling. Let's buy paint and bolts with it. And what's it by 5 years from now? Is there a load test 5 years from now if we certify? And if you keep it maintained and keep it painted like you're supposed to, how long can you extend the no load test requirement? 15 to 25 years, right? See if,
Spacers? And let's look over here underneath. Better before you climb up above. If I had my hammer, I'd do a hammer test. Any rust in any of the connections? Rust in all of them, the bulge. You see all the bulges, right?
those
Is there
treads ready
anything
to
that
drop
if you're
someone.
looking up straight up, do you see the sky if you look straight up on some of these? You look over here. See that one right there? Can you just look straight up?
So that means there's
How about this
nothing
over
in
here?
there.
Feel all
That
right?
tread's ready to drop.
Any of these
Look
bolts
right through the
that are
tread.
holding as best they can, any of them totally gone. Are they all suspect in your mind?
And you said
Would you
because the
allow
hex
anything
bolts
to
are
be
60 to
welded
75
and remain
years.
in place?
They're not 75 years old. Hex
50 to
rivets are 75 to 100 years old.
Yeah.
Rivets was
Now,
the first
let's
method.
see how it lands on the
Square
ground.
bolts came next.
Is this all rotting on the ground? Yeah. So the channel is completely gone?
Snow buildup at the feet, always rot the feet out.
So, and how much rust? Quarter inch every 25 years. How long you got of rust there? Every 5 years. All these treads are quarter, 3/8, half inch. If I was to stomp along on these, you think some of these would give way? Some of them have been patched with some welded bars. This is a typical repair when these flats give out.
So you can't do that anymore.
Lots
You
of
can't
vandals,
weld.
smashes.
You can make sandwiches, but you can't weld those because of the lead content on the treads.
This is a perfect candidate of how bad things get when you just leave it alone. Have your inspectors ever walked down these alleyways?
Oh, hold that question. So, one of the things that's been talked about now, so that everybody knows, anything with spacers, you have to be careful. You can't guarantee those. We can create reinforcement sandwiches, that's just to buy another 5 years or so. But most old 50 to 75-year-old grading should be replaced. The new grading coming in should be galvanized, primed and painted. You're gonna get 40, 50 years out of that.
You reinforce it, do you have to load test it?
Well, the main thing that's holding the fire escape is the two side bolts on either side. That's for the load testing. The grading, all you're doing when you sandwich the flats is to keep them from shifting. So the sandwich is basically reinforcing. What we're saying to the client is that we can't guarantee this tread that it's not gonna break. So you may have one of the flats break in between the sandwich, but it's not enough to create a trip hazard or a capture. But it's basically saying these will start breaking over time in the future. We just can't tell which one's gonna. So this is a Band-Aid. This sandwich is nothing but a Band-Aid to buy some more time. And usually it's just another 5 years that you buy. And you're making the client aware that he should change the grading now, but sometimes you only have a 25% failure rate in all the grading. But you sandwich it all basically under the refurbishment.
And why didn't they write this one up? Maybe they didn't and nobody paid attention. Maybe they didn't know what to look for. And if it ain't broke, why fix it? There's also other reasons too. It's not a priority. People think these are great. They've always been great. That nobody's ever fell 25 years ago. Nobody fell 50 years ago. And they think that these things are indestructible. But now this is what I call a hidden time bomb. This is a grenade with a pin already pulled out of it. A fireman or somebody coming out of that top is going to fall down these stairs and get hurt or jammed or stuck.
Then you
So
got
that,
rest your
this is part of the 101.3. All exterior steel wooden stairs. Okay? Is this an exterior steel wooden stair?
It is.
Is there enough water falling on it? Got obstructions? This is fairly new. This is 10, 15 years old. Nailed together. Safe, solid. You think? We wiggle it a little bit. Okay? Does this need to be inspected on the 101.3?
It does.
So all exterior steel wooden stairs need to be inspected. Need a permit to repair this? Renovator's license? No paint on it, but they can stain it, there's no paint. How about this one? All exterior steel wooden stairs? What is this?
What is it? Where is it? What is it?
What is that place? It's just the back of commercial restaurants, offices.
Yeah, this is just one of the back alleys. This is actually one that has a basement access hole there also, and it has a stair there with no rail. So, all exterior steel wooden stairs. So there's always some other violations that come into play when they do these. So,
There, this is an handrail. We're missing anything here? Handrails are missing. Let's take a look at that. There's water falling on it. These are all metal. Any bulging rails or, this looks like an adaptation to a bulkhead plus a stair. But it's missing its rail. It's fairly, what, 50 to 25 years old, you estimate? Does this need to be inspected and have a cert on this?
It does.
Okay, so because it's 101, all exterior steel wooden stairs. Now, let's take a look at it.
we'll get there slowly. But now we're getting to that big one with a big gate. And that's an issue with all, you have a common way, it can't be locked in. So here we are in the back of a building. We have this huge gate, and it has cables and it had chains locking it. So the firemen can't get in without cutting through to get in. And the tenants, should they come down the fire escape, get locked in the back area there as an area of refuge.
This one. Now, this is going to happen a lot of times. You can't even get access. So let's talk about access. This door right here, which has a lock, is illegal because now these people cannot egress. It's very simple. On the inside, there's a push bar. That's all you do. So whenever you have these gates that do whatever this thing is doing here for the trucks,
And break
that must be able to be pushed out. So that's a simple modification to make that a crash bar door. And then if you mesh enough of this,
You can also mesh the fire escape instead of this area, open up this area so that the trash can get in and out, and at the fire escape create a cage at the bottom that has a crash bar.
you know, you mesh this, then nobody can put their hand in and force the door open. So that's an easy, but it's illegal to lock somebody in a cage. Now, let's talk about from down here.
I think some of those apartments, right?
So the main thing that we did on this building, and I'll kind of, finish it up from here on what we were looking at, is down from below, you could look up and find that the fire escapes were not painted. You saw from down below that the cement into the wall was all spalling. You saw from below square head bolts with the naked eye. So he didn't have to go up and let's see how bad it really is. It's already showing that the routine maintenance did not occur. They kept it painted, and now it's been 10, 15 years since they last painted it, but the original hardware is an indication that they've been doing the right thing. The wrong thing is that been plenty of paint being put on these fire escapes because the guys that have been fixing these have been the painters, the landscapers, the florists, the maintenance guys, tenants from the building, helping the landlord, cut on the rent. And what do? They paint everything, and whenever you have a problem, what do you hide it with? Silicone, duct tape. If you have a big gash in the C channel and there's a hole through it, what do you hide it with? Duct tape. They paint it black, and if you want to make it look like rust, grab a little bit of dirt, throw it on the duct tape. What's it look like? Surface rust. You've seen it all. You've seen all kinds of things out there. So,
I can't get any more closer. From down here. more
so there's
paper,
about
more rust.
100 of these, or 100 plus videos of us walking around the United States and doing exactly this, and many, many examples of crossovers, examples of
From down here,
cantilevers.
and you don't, I know you can't see to the 5th or 6th floor. You need to look at the first floor. Any evidence of maintenance, any shiny hex head bolts in this 50 to 75-year-old structure.
Now, I see a mix of square head and ribbons.
Okay?
Square heads and
Square
rivets.
heads and rivets.
So they've changed the windows on this, they've changed the boiler on this place, they've changed the roof on this place several times. What have they
And
never
every release
touched?
arm on there. And you can see that would let that
They
cantilever
spent
drop
50
to
grand on the
50%.
foyer. What didn't they spend 5 grand
I'm not
on?
sure whether even the cantilever is balanced correctly. And you're looking into the cement into the walls. Anything that you want to share?
So I want to, I'll pause it there, but basically what you have is the ability to train fire people, building inspectors, with videos that are sitting there. So if you go to YouTube and you just type in Firescape Academy, Firescape Seminar, Firescape Inspection, Firescape Load Test, what you're going to see is about 1,000 videos out there. Majority of the videos we have way through, if you go through what's listed on the front of your thing, it says the National Firescape Association. We started that organization because we had so much documentation out there that we needed an avenue to put it out there. So it's a new organization that's just started, it's still in its infancy. Still going to be looking for, in the future, funding to basically help, get the word out that Firescapes are in a bad way. But a lot of the videos and everything is either through YouTube or through the National Firescape Association. You just log on, link in, and start playing. So if some of the people in your departments haven't made it here, have watched the video. If they don't have time to do downtown walk-arounds in their city, I mean, I think we even have one for Westboro with Gene Novak doing walk-arounds, and basically we walked around a building that you guys recently had it taken care of, right? So you had an engineer that came out, took control of the situation, a vendor that came out and did all the work, and basically it was their first guinea pig. It's a 3 to 5 year program. You're not going to get this overnight. It took 75 years to screw this up. You can't fix it overnight. There's too much blowback, but on a case-by-case basis, either because somebody pulled a permit on a building, and in prioritization, and you basically what you get is onesie twosies. You just keep getting better at it, and just like sprinklers and alarms, after a while the standard has been set, and you don't need any special documentation to say this is how we do it. Everybody does it this way, and that is, you really need to get the engineer oversight on these things to basically make sure that somebody knows what the vendor's doing, and make sure that that vendor just pulls a permit. And then your building official is the final guy walking out to make sure that the vendor and the engineer is doing the right job, because every now and then they too drop the ball. We all drop balls. Everybody's going to drop a ball. But after a while, nobody's dropping balls on sprinkler systems. Nobody's dropping balls on alarm systems. Because after a while, it's just unacceptable for any substandard work to be done. But in the beginning, are you going to let a few things, kind of, because everybody's sort of getting the feel as to what the marketplace. Because as you mentioned before, these are mom and pop shops that are going to do this work, who right now, because of the EPA and OSHA, might not be able to get back into this work because of those requirements plus insurance requirements. So it may be going back to sort of steel erector type of companies to come out and play with these, because they have the proper insurance, they have the proper requirements. So as this sort of modifies and this industry starts getting its legs, you're going to sort of see the change in that more responsible engineers are going to start stepping up, more responsible ironwork companies are going to start stepping up and getting the work done. But in the meantime, you're going to get questions like the wood ones. What do we do with this one? The mixed breed ones, which is metal and wood ones. The decks that have been on the back of a porch decks that have been on the back of a building for 50 years. What do you do with those? You know what I'm saying? And they look, and they're already tilting. They're already, and the wood is old. And you're like, what are we doing? This guy's facing a $75,000 rebuild on a building that's, Section 8 housing. And those porches are part of the means of egress, because there's porches and these rickety stairs going down the back. Well, on a case-by-case basis, you're just going to address that. And let's use the porch as an example. A porch, 50 years ago was a place you go hang to get out of the heat, talk with your neighbors. Today a porch is for what? Storage. Bicycles, cans. So a lot of times the rear decks or the rear porches on these can get totally taken down, and you know what you put up? A skinny little fire escape. And instead of $75,000, they could put up $15,000, $20,000 fire escape. on what used to be a big deck, and everybody wants to hang, nobody's hanging on porches. So some of these decks are all gonna transform into basically back to basic standard industrial fire escape systems to satisfy the egress. And at that time, you guys can discuss whether or not this is a fire escape, or is it a exterior stair that we really need to 7-11, 36 inches wide, make it so firemen can go up while they're coming down, kind of thing. Those can be discussed at that time. Let's open up some more questions that you guys might have. But, is there anything that we said today that is, you think is against code? Is there anything that, you actually brought up a good question in earlier. Oh, the lead.
Yeah, regarding lead work, I was researching OSHA and EPA. You are allowed to do it, it's just you have to follow procedures. Rushing away the painted area or area orange wood and lead, follow safety procedures.
You have to hire a licensed de-leader, that's usually not an iron worker guy, to come and basically abate the area. So I'm going to weld this tread, or which I should just rebolt, but you know, it's all economics. And so in order for me to fix this connection, I have to have an abater come down and basically abate the whole area. And I can come down and just start welding. But on fire escapes, 99% of all the fire escapes built in the United States is bolted connection. Why would I have a welder come in? And for me to just change that bolt, I don't need to de-lead the area. Just break the bolts, put in 2 bolts, we're done.
Which we here would require a hot permit.
Right.
Hot permit for welding.
And welding is, again, welding was the basically the cheat for the many years. You know that fire escapes needed $10,000 worth of work, but for $2,000, somebody came in and welded the whole thing tight. And yeah, and for 1, 2, or 3 years, it wasn't going to fall. But as soon as the rust kept growing, it ripped off a lot of the welds. And basically, which ones? Nobody knows. So you're not going to be seeing too many hot permit requests anyway on a fire escape repair, because since they're all older than 1978, and they all presume to have lead as per the EPA, nobody's going to be welding them on them anyway. So the repair is erect a set, change bolts. Okay. So any other questions that come up? Because I think we can probably end this by 12:30 and still call it 4 hours. It's Robert's call.
No, that's fine, I think you covered everything that I wanted to cover.
Okay. So
Typically, what kind of foundations do you see? If an exterior egress like that has a base, is it 8 feet or is it how?
the typical
Cement
base
block?
that I find is usually 1 foot deep, 2 feet deep the most at a base. And then sonos, I'll see a lot of sonos that are old, 50 to 75 years, are only 2 feet deep. Very few are, but you can easily, next to an existing foundation, create a sonotube situation. But again, it's all depending on if it's solid and it's not listing in any way, we would identify that and share that with the building inspector as to whether or not they want to bring it up to code, or, but if she's sitting solid there in the ground and she hasn't shifted in any way, we discussed that with the city. That's why I report back to the city official with photographs. There's 2 things: what we say and what he sees. We say the thing is great. It's like, what are you talking about? The thing's a wreck. So you basically, by sharing your opinion with somebody with a photograph, you better know what you're talking about. Otherwise, the city official will tear you apart. Yes.
Now, I know we've sent out a lot of letters and stuff like that. Are you communicating with our office when you've been called in?
Well,
Inspection?
as far as any inspections that we've done, there hasn't been a lot of inspections that we've been getting for the Lowell area. And a lot of times, the reason why is because they'll call local structural engineers from Lowell. So it's not that we're getting all the calls. If they go through the internet side of things, we may pick up a call, and whenever that happens, we share the information with you guys. But there's, I don't know if have you done 100, 200, 300 fire escape repairs
No,
and permits?
I have gotten a lot of opinion letters from, going to CORs.
Yeah. So again, the opinion letters is basically an engineer that somebody else found that went out and they looked, and then they sent him a letter, and he now needs to educate them on, listen, what I really need you to do is give me more information, some photographs. So we're spending a lot of time training people, and that's one of the things we suggest is having a class. As you go into a couple of years into this, we recommend having a class here, but now inviting structural engineers and iron workers from the area who have been either involved in some activity to come to a class, and basically, and we did that in Portland. We had a class of about 150, and we're in the class, we had firefighters, building inspectors, vendors that did the repair work, and structural engineers in the area to basically have a free-for-all to see if they could tear apart this scenario, like, oh, this is crazy, what are you doing? And that all got recorded. And then it was in Portland, Oregon, that at the end, we also recorded the walk-around. So imagine 25 guys that basically stuck around at the end, and we were walking down the Portland streets looking at everybody's fire escape. It was like a parade, and all these people were coming out, what are you looking at my fire escape for? And we were actually having a training class, but it was a great class to watch because you get to see everybody's opinion. Because engineers have opinions on this, you know what I'm saying? And again, it's just an opinion, but they can't back it up with what the code says. The code says load tested or other evidence of strength. Their other evidence of strength has been an opinion with a disclaimer clause, which you guys are now saying, that worked when the thing was 25 years old. That almost kind of worked when the thing was 50 years old. Right now, these things are 75 plus years old, and you still want to hand me an opinion on grandma? She can't run. She needs, a hip replacement, you know what I'm saying? Yes.
Well, I brought it up earlier when you said you reject these, some of these engineers,
Affidavits.
what's the alternative then? What do they have to do to get it?
Well, they have to actually do either destructive testing or replacement support, like Cisco was saying, where they actually endorse, a program where they give me a scope of work where they show they're putting a new channel into epoxy bolts. I think that's happened once. But I mean, every building official is within his rights. Just because it's a stamped affidavit or a signed affidavit from a registered design professional, we still have the right to say, we reject it for cause. I mean, you go out there and look at it, you can see, he basically just sent the form letter out, and he feels comfortable because he has that little qualifying section in there that says, based on what I can see. So if it fails where it's connected to the building, where the channel goes in, you didn't inspect it, you can say, so, I mean, it doesn't serve any purpose to accept those, effectively. I mean, maybe our ass is covered because we have an affidavit, but it doesn't make the people in the building safe, so I don't have any problem rejecting those.
They were basically submitting an exam. If you read the code, it says examine, test, or certify. So they were performing an exam and submitting it as the actual test or the certification. So after they perform an exam that looks good to me, they would call that a certification. When in actuality it was an exam.
In Westboro, we created a
You need to come
form
up with a
that's
plan for this.
certified, and then we'll give them a certificate of inspection after that. So we issued one so far. We only have 12 fire escapes there.
Right, so he only has 12 that he's aware of. And usually when you start counting all exterior steel with stairs, you're gonna have a lot more. It's not only gonna be 12, it's gonna be 1,200 when you start really dealing with some of the residential and everything. But when you look at the affidavit, if you look at the preliminary affidavit and the final affidavit, it itself acts like a final confidence test if you read the language on it.
Have you had an opportunity to look forward into the codes? In other words, in Massachusetts, we're working with the 2009 I-codes, and we're, other than the energy codes, skipping over 2012. Are you involved with the people who are promulgating the 2015 codes and looking forward to seeing whether it's going to expand on the inspection requirements or testing certifications and so forth?
Well, as they say, the Fire Escape Reform Act of 2013, you're looking at the one guy that nationally is bringing this up as an issue, and that's because I'm in the trade. But there's nobody doing anything. And as far as am I involved, I only have, my watch only has 24 hours. My stock options that I have with Cisco systems, I only own one, maybe, or none. So it's really, we work with people who basically get me involved with somebody. I can explain. I've done a lot of these shows, I don't want to say shows, these seminars free. These are usually all free that I do these. And usually because I'm in the area. So if I happen to be in Seattle, I'll do a class in Seattle. If I happen to be in LA, I'll do a class in LA because I'm doing something else in the area. And that's how you keep the cost down. But there is really nobody concerned about the fire escape side of these things. And basically whenever there's a code change of any kind, they copy whatever was said about fire escapes in the older codes, and they just bring forward, you've got one paragraph for the International Building Code, and that's it. You got one for the NFPA, and that's it. In the whole book, that's the entire statement for how to deal with the fire escape inspection. Now, to build a new one, there's all these other documents, so 42 high and all that stuff, but to inspect it, and then on the International Fire Code, there's nothing. It's one paragraph that says, depending on the structural condition, the load test may be ordered by the official. That's it. So it basically threw everything back down to you guys, but as far as the language, but it did change, and I can send you the language in Oregon, in that they actually took this class and they actually added this language of clarification that basically says everything that we're talking about here, and that is a fire escape should have a confidence test. Confidence test should then be used with engineer oversight to basically watch the vendor repairing the fire escape. A confidence test should be issued upon completion of the fire escape repair and load tested, or use the confidence test to say it was certified to eliminate the load test.
Well, that's the reason I was asking you, because typically things find their way into the code because either there's a disaster, somebody invented something, or there's a vendor out there who wants to make it happen. And since you,
Point me in the right direction. If I'll speak and I get introduced to a lot of people, like anything else. Sometimes you get a lot of resistance. We found YouTube is actually, it's not like anything else. Sometimes you have to surround the castle. You know what I'm saying? And that's what happens every now and then. Sometimes I get more out of this meeting than I have in a general meeting of where somebody says, "Oh, you should go to the state, and the state will issue a letter." They're busy. They're all busy.
You know what's going to happen? I mean, hopefully, you and other initiatives will allow different communities to be more proactive so that they can get ahead of it. But I really think what will happen is what's happened with everything, that we're dealing with issues directly resulting from the station nightclub fire that we never dealt with before. That was the result of that. So God forbid, one of these balconies fail, that either a firefighter or a resident dies, then everything is going to change and we'll be forced to enforce what's in there. However, we have to do it. Rather than wait for that to happen, want to get out ahead of it. Well, that's what's going to happen. God forbid there'll be another incident like in the 70s. Somebody dies and all of a sudden.
And it got videotaped.
It's going to be focused. Now it'll be even more so. It'll be everywhere. And then those people that said, "Oh, we don't have the resources to do this," they won't be able to get away with just saying that. I don't want to be in that position.
Right. And like I said, it took 75 years to screw this up, so it's going to take 3 to 5 years to get your feet wet, change slowly on, and again, if you're dealing with every building that has a permit on it, that's already the start. So if you have 10,000 buildings in your community, and 1,000 buildings a year basically pull permits, you're already started. And believe me, when you're dealing with a fire escape on this building, and my neighbor has a fire escape, but he's not pulling a permit that week, but he hears from his neighbors like, "Hey, you know what they're doing with these fire escapes, man? They made me put this tag on here," and really? No, I haven't touched mine in 30 years. Well, it's changed, man. Now the city